over to Rebecca.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited about today's event. Okay, so you guys, first and foremost, I want you guys all to remember the whole protocol. There is going to be an option for you guys to do your questions. So make sure that you put those in the chat, okay? There is also, if you have questions or anything, make sure you raise your hand, okay? Sorry, we got some printing going on. That'll stop in just a second. But today is going to be all about figuring out how we can get our message to people who didn't leave. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead, stand back. I have my notepad ready because I'm super excited about this one. And I'm going to, am I throwing this to Dex or am I throwing this to Ice?
Dex.
Okay, you're gonna have to unmute yourself now, Dex. There we go.
I got you, Dex.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Brandon. Hi, everyone. I'm Dax Davis. I'm the Director of Sales and the Director of Programming for Alpha Media's 8 radio stations here in the Coachella Valley. And whenever Rebecca and Brandon approached us and said, hey, we want to educate our members about podcasting, I got to thinking, who's the best podcaster in the building? And as I was thinking about that, I thought about the power of the company that I work for. We've got 199 stations in 44 markets across the United States. And we are headquartered out of Portland. And a lot of our great talent is out of there. You will meet one here shortly. But ICE has been in the podcasting world for a very, very long time. Just a quick history on podcasting. There's kind of been the early podcasting, which happened about 12, 13, 14 years ago, and it never really caught on. But here in the last 4 or 5 years, podcasting has had a resurgence, and ICE has been a part of both of those sides, the old and the new. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our friend Ice. Yes, that is her name. She's on the radio. So when you're on the radio, you kind of got to have a radio name, but it does make sense. She's originally from Detroit, Michigan, and she's been in the radio business for 16 years. In the last 6, we as Alpha have been lucky to have her working at our headquarters in Portland, Oregon. She's the assistant program director of Live 95.5, the top 40 station. She's also the music director there. And if you've never been to Portland, you've never heard her on the air, but you might have seen her on TV. Most of the time, radio folks are not TV friendly, but luckily, Ice is. She was starred on a couple of episodes of the reality TV show Flavor of Love, which aired on VH1 in the mid-2000s. So I'm very proud to introduce Ice to all of you. Ice, take it away.
Woo-hoo. Thank you so much, Dax and Rebecca. That was a great intro. And I just want to say thank you to all of you that are here with us today, taking time out of your day to, share what we're going to share today. And there's a lot of stuff going on in this world today. So us to have a platform to kind of get our message out and what we want to say so that we can unite as a community. And that's what podcasting does. And so what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to go through a presentation here basically about podcasting. If you're a beginner, if you're in broadcasting and you've done it before, we'll share some, tips and stats on that for you. But before I share my screen, I just want to let you know that I will be sharing some sound with you guys. So I just want to make sure that you're not surprised at the sound, and make sure you're adjusting according to you and how that sounds for you guys. So let me go ahead and share these. Make sure, can you guys see my screen right now?
Looks great.
Fabulous. And let's see, sharing people with groups. Anyone with the link done? Give me 1 second. All right, here we go. So like Dax said, I've been doing podcasting, for the last, ever since I've been with Alpha, and podcasting has been around for a long time. Dax and I were talking before we even got on this Zoom call, 13, 15 years ago. And I never really got into it just because I'm such an impatient person. And to sit and listen to a 60-minute podcast on something I really wasn't passionate about, I was like, I don't want to do that. But the more and more I started learning about podcasts and how many people it can reach and what a niche, community you can build, I started becoming more and more interested in that. So what I'm going to go through is how to start a podcast. But basically, I'm going to show you some of the tricks that I do with the podcast that I have with my co-host here, and his name is Huggy. He works with us in Portland, Oregon, and our podcast is simply just called the Huggy and Ice Podcast. And we have an intro for that podcast, and you can have an intro, whether it just be audio, whether it be video, or both. But I really think it's a good hook, and it's a good kind of tease as to what your audience is about to get when they check out your podcast. So this is our intro. I just wanted to play it for you real quick. So we'll go ahead and do that.
Welcome to the Huggy and Ice Podcast. Here they are, Huggy and Ice.
To me, that is just so fun. It really, showcases kind of what you're about to get in our podcast. And, like I said, you don't have to have a video. You can just have audio, but the beauty of having video and audio is that you have both, so you can use both to work with. Pretty much what we'll go over today is how to start a podcast, how to distribute that podcast once you are done, recording it, and how to make it successful. And at the very end, I do have a list of all the equipment that I have here at my house that I've purchased to actually do this from my living room. All right, let's see here. So what is a podcast? A lot of people are probably wondering, what the heck is a podcast? It's basically just a subset of on-demand audio that consists of recurring shows or audio content collections. And you can see some facts down here of how many people actually listen to podcasts, what they're consuming, per week, how many people and how many episodes of podcasts are currently out there in the world. I mean, there's millions, and they range from, how to cook eggs or how to boil eggs, from how to, fix your car. And I just think it's really cool that you can connect with people on a level as to what you're passionate about. And it's really interesting to see. Let's see, we'll go to the next one. A lot of people probably ask the question, what should I talk about in a podcast? And Rebecca was just telling us that she started doing a podcast in the beginning of the year, and hasn't been in broadcasting. She's never been in broadcasting. And it's so easy as long as you're talking about something that you're passionate about. And what mine and Huggy's podcast is about, if you're wondering, we dated for 4 years. And yes, we still work with each other. So that's a challenge. And that's a lesson that I've learned that I'll never do again. Never date anybody you work with. But we turned that into a podcast where it's, 2 30-year-olds who used to date that are just trying to figure it out. And that's pretty much what our podcast is. And if you think about it, there's probably a lot of people out there in their 30s that are exes that are just trying to figure it out. So you really want to find your niche and your target and narrow what you want to talk about down to something that's not so broad, but something somebody can really hone in on. So for a lot of you that are listening, I've heard that, a lot of you are businesses, or, you're entertainers doing a podcast for a business. I would definitely talk about what you love, because odds are there's probably going to be somebody out there that's going to that your podcast is going to resonate with. And then the more they listen, the more they're hopefully going to share your podcast with everybody else. And then that way you're gaining more of an audience. A co-host is definitely someone, that you should trust, definitely someone that shares the same interests as you and also has the same passion. So I think it really helps, because doing a podcast solo, that's tough. I mean, you just got to talk. And, if you have somebody who's on there with you, they'll really be able to, kind of carry the ball, once you're done kind of giving your point. So even if it's, a special guest that you wanted to bring on, if you wanted to interview somebody, I definitely think it's a fun way to relate to your audience who's actually listening. And which is kind of down here. You can do roundtable conversations and anything, cars, food, beer, hobbies, whatever you're passionate about, that's what your podcast should be about. What else should you prepare when it comes to your podcast? Well, you should definitely have a podcast name. And it should be descriptive, and it should have some sort, the Huggy and Ice podcast, I guess that's really not as descriptive as
Right.
what, you would want it to be, but that's just kind of what we came up with. So if it's something that you feel, will really hit home and will really showcase what your podcast is about, that's kind of what your podcast name should be. Episode length, for me, like I was saying before, I'm super impatient. So podcasts can range anywhere from a minute to an hour long. I wouldn't recommend going over an hour long, just because of people's attention spans. They can get lost, and if they're not interested in what you're talking about, they'll tune out right away. But then again, if you think about it, why would they listen to your podcast in the first place if they're not interested in the topic that you're talking about? So the length really varies depending on what you're talking about and how long your episodes you want them to be. Huggy and mine's podcast, we typically range from anywhere from 10 minutes to about 17 minutes, because we get in and we get out and we get our message across. Your episode frequency, you definitely want to be consistent. I would say, what Huggy and I do, we do a weekly episode and we put that out every Friday, and we put it out at 1:00 every day. So we'll get to this later on in the presentation, but from where we distribute our podcast, I make sure it goes out at that same time every day, because once you start building, a clientele and an audience, they expect it. They're expecting, I'm getting ready to watch the Jersey Shore tonight, and I expect to watch that show 8:00 every Thursday night. So they expect it. So you want to make sure that you're putting your podcast out there on a consistent basis, whether that be weekly, whether that be monthly, whether it be once a quarter. But make sure your audience knows that, and make sure they know how often you're going to be posting and where and when they could look for your podcast. Your cover art and your image, going back to the intro that I played for you guys, you really want to think of something that's going to showcase what you're about and what your podcast is about. Logos, you can add that if you feel like you really want to have that in there, but something that just draws people in, man. You really just want to kind of have them, even if they've never even heard of your podcast before, if they're surfing, on iTunes or Spotify or on social media, and they see something that catches their eye, that's just a thumbnail, most likely you'll get a click on that and you'll get a listen on that. So where do you host your audio? I get this question asked a lot, and being in the broadcasting industry, we have, a lot of platforms that we use here. But even if you're not in the broadcasting industry, there are a lot of platforms out there where you can host your podcast. And for example, I would definitely start out with SoundCloud, because for one, it's free up until you get to a certain point where if you start adding more and more audio, they will ask you to subscribe for a monthly fee. But in the beginning, it's free. So that gives you a kind of, a foot in the door. And that will allow you to create an RSS feed, which basically your RSS feed is going to be attached to your SoundCloud where you're posting your episodes. And then that RSS feed, you can then submit to iTunes. You can then submit to Google Podcasts. You can submit to Spotify, which you can see here, with the Huggy and Ice podcast. They're on both iTunes and Spotify. So then when you upload your episodes to SoundCloud, that just automatically disperses into the interwebs, and everybody can access your podcast. And as you can see, Huggy and I, we just started this podcast not too long ago, and we're only 6 episodes in. But as you can see here on the left, we got 300 listens, a couple hundred listens. I'll take it, man. That just means somebody's listening. And going back to what I was saying before, if you got one person, you'll hopefully, entice more people to listen from there. How do you get your episodes everywhere? That's a lot. There's a lot you can do, because the more distribution you have, the more growth your podcast is going to have. So you definitely want to have some podcasting platforms where they can listen. And that goes back to Apple Podcasting and Spotify and Google Play. If your brand or your business has a website, take advantage of that. We do that here at Alpha Media, and a lot of our brands do have station websites. And in addition to, getting our podcast out on SoundCloud, iTunes, I also put it up on our website. And so that way, when we're on the air, we can talk about it. So if you're in meetings with clients, or if you're talking to other peers and, other colleagues, you can say, hey, check out our website. Our podcast is up there. You can listen to it right now on demand. And YouTube is a great asset that you could use when you are doing your podcast. Zoom, what we're doing right now, that's exactly what Huggy and I use to do our podcast, because in my opinion, you're able to not only record your video, so we have video with our podcasts, but you're also able to pull that audio, and then so that's where it goes up on SoundCloud and iTunes. So you have your video portion and your audio portion. And I think Zoom is great because, if you want to interview somebody, if you wanted to bring somebody on your show, your co-host, you could bring them on like how we're just doing right now. And it's been successful. Of course, there's going to be hiccups and there's going to be people or technology, little glitches and stuff, but that's going to happen. It's real life, real world. And I wanted to bring this up because you really want to make each episode count. Why are you doing the podcast? You want to really make it count. And you want to take these kind of additional steps when you're putting your episodes out there. Have a custom headline. Instead of using the date or, a show name, get a custom name. So the last episode that Huggy and I did with our podcast, this is a tweet that I did last week. It was about myself and Huggy and a friend of ours. I pretty much almost got us in a car accident when we were on our way to our friend's wedding. And so I think giving a little tease as to what your podcast is going to be about will, get people to kind of click. It's like clickbait. You want to think of your headline as clickbait. What is going to get somebody to click on my podcast? And then have a little description, give them a little sneak peek as to what they're going to get before they actually hit play. I'll never forget that time that I almost did that to my friends. Some promotional ideas when it comes to your podcast. Definitely, like we were talking about before, use your website. You can use banner ads. We do that on our websites. Share on socials. So this is where, if you don't want to, use SoundCloud, or if you don't have a marketing team or anyone to help kind of put your podcast out, get on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Those are probably your top 3 primary ones that you want to do. And you can either do it from your personal account and share your podcast out there, or you can, create a whole new social account that's just for your podcast. For my particular podcast, the Huggy and Ice podcast, we don't have like a Huggy and Ice handle. We just distribute it from our own personal accounts just because of the audience that we already have. And we also have our station brand that we can push our podcast out as well. But I would recommend sharing your podcast on socials, because that way you're reaching so many people if you don't have the assets to do so. And then find other people, like if you have a guest on there, use them to get your podcast out there. Have them post it on their socials, have them post it on their website. The more you get your podcast out there, the more you're going to have more listens and more fans. Speaking of audience, get them involved. This is something that I've learned being at Alpha, customer service. And I'm sure a lot of you know this too, because the customer is always right. And so if you have somebody, interacting with you when you're posting your podcast, whether that be on socials or SoundCloud, and they're engaging, even if they're just like saying a comment, LOL, this episode was funny, engage with them. Hey, thanks, Amanda. Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate it. Hope you stick around, for episode 8, which comes out, next Friday, 1:00. So you always just kind of want to let them know that they matter, and let them know that you're thankful, that they took the time to sit there and listen to what you had to say, because they don't have to do that. They don't have to listen to your podcast. But I think the more you engage, the more you'll entice them to keep coming back. And this is something cool that I threw in there, and I haven't done this yet with my podcast. But you can make a bonus episode where you do get questions that come down, and that whole episode could just be a bonus episode of where you're answering everybody's questions. So I think that's a great way to get your audience involved and let them know that you're loyal to them as they're loyal to you. And then here, this is the final slide. So this is basically all the equipment that I use. And I got this from another coworker of mine. And it looks like a lot, and it's really not. And I know if you're just a beginner and you're probably going, wow, what the heck is an AKG Project Studio P220 large microphone? Well, it's basically just equipment that I've trusted and my colleagues have trusted to use to make a podcast. And it's really been successful for me, and it really works. And I believe all of these our links. So we can send you this deck, and these are all links to Amazon. I ordered all of this stuff on Amazon, and it all came right to my house. And I'm not a engineer. I'm not somebody who's like super geeky when it comes to equipment. And I Googled, how do I hook up my AKG to my Scarlett Solo? How do I, hook up my speakers with my cables in order to get my sound on my laptop? So it's real. And if there's anything that I can help you guys do, please feel free to let me know, and we can go over questions here in a second. But I'd be more than happy to kind of help and go through with you guys, do a Zoom one-on-one, and I can help you set everything up. And really, I mean, that's really all I had. I hope I kind of gave you a little bit of insight as to what a podcast is. And if you're a beginner, it's not hard at all. You just really have to have something that you're passionate about. And if it's your business, talk about it, because most likely, like I said, there's going to be somebody out there that you're going to connect with. And if it's a way for you to get your message out, I'm sure they'll help share the word. So I hope that helps.
Great. Okay, so everybody, you guys, this is your time to go ahead and add any of your questions in. We've got a couple already.
Okay.
I have one from Cindy Burson. It says, what is your ultimate goal? What is your ultimate goal with your podcast? To monetize it, advertise another product, or gain personal exposure?
Yeah, I think for the podcast that I am actually on right now with Huggy, I think it's just personal exposure. We do have opportunities where we could have clients, like, let's say, I had like Coca-Cola, for example. Like, if they were to sponsor our podcast, I would have a Coca-Cola can in here. And when we put our podcasts out on SoundCloud, or when we put them on iTunes, we're able to see how many people are listening and how many people it reaches. And with social media, you're able to see impressions. So not only are you getting how many people are listening to you, you're also getting how many impressions that is. And that could be a comment, that could be a like, that could be a share. So it just goes to show that, yeah, you can incorporate, clients. But for my particular podcast, it's basically, to be honest, it's kind of therapy. Because that's
what I say.
it's therapy. I mean, really, it's us, me and my ex, being able to just talk one-on-one, and being able to get our emotions out there, and being able to talk about what's on our minds, versus trying to do that in 7 seconds on the radio.
Yeah. So another question was, does it matter as far as the views or the engagement? Is the platform that you release it on, does it matter? Because, like, for instance, there is apps that you can utilize, like Anchor, for instance, is what I use. It goes to all the different platforms, but do you think that it might engage more people if it goes through like the way that you're doing it? Does that matter?
I really haven't had much experience with that, but I in my opinion, I really don't think it matters. Because who's to say who you're putting your podcast out to? They might not have Facebook, or they might have Anchor, or they might have whatever it is that you're putting your podcast out on. So I just think any way you can get your audio out there, I think, is beneficial. And I really don't think it matters on what platform you choose to host your audio on. I think as long as you're just getting it out there, I think people will be able to find it.
Now, you did mention, you said the RSS feed. I just want to clarify, when you get that, is that a file type? Is that what that means?
So an RSS feed is basically a link wherever you're hosting your audio. So I'll use SoundCloud, for example, just because that's what I recommend, because one, it's free, and two, it's easy to use. But you will see there's an option on SoundCloud that says, your RSS feed. And basically it's just taking that link, and then when you're going to iTunes or when you're going to Spotify, they're going to ask you, hey, what's your RSS link that is hosting your audio? Because going back to your platform of how you're doing your podcast, there's also Libsyn, there's Podbean, there's so many different platforms that can distribute your podcast. So all of those are going to have an RSS feed. So no matter what you're using, you'll be able to get that RSS feed and then submit it to iTunes and Spotify. And it'll take some time for them to approve your podcast once you submit it, but most likely you'll get approved, and you'll be able to be on those platforms as well.
I'd like to jump in here real quick.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, RSS stands for Real simple syndication. So it's really a string. It's the instructions for the Spotify, for the iTunes, to how to ingest the podcast and then allow them to distribute it out to the folks that are following it.
There you go.
Thank you, Dex. That's awesome. Now, does anybody else have any other questions? Because I mean, I could totally, yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I was wondering, Amanda.
Yeah.
Well, two things. Let me get the short one out of the way. Where in Detroit are you from?
I'm originally from St. Clair Shores, Michigan.
That's where my mom lived.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
12 miles.
You know, it's such a beautiful, it sounds really random to people listening, but that is one of the most beautiful places in the state of Michigan.
It really is. And we got a boat, and my dad just put his boat in the water, so that's where he's at right now, I bet.
Now, are you up in Portland or are you down here?
So I'm in Portland, Oregon right now.
Okay, because there's a couple of people I'd love you to meet.
Well, when I'm home next, we'll link up.
Did you put that boat over at the Detroit Yacht Club by chance?
No, we didn't. So we have ours at Emerald City.
Okay, because I don't know if you know this, Rebecca, but our good friend Murph is from Detroit also, and he spent all of his time over at the Detroit Yacht Club, and I did when I was a kid too.
So cool.
Here's my real question. There's a great lady down here, a great resource named Heather Rodriguez, who's got me all excited about YouTube.
Yeah.
And
Ramirez. It's Heather Ramirez.
what did I say? Did I say her name?
You said Rodriguez. So it's Heather Ramirez. Sorry.
Heather. And thank you, Rebecca. And what I use it for is to learn things. And I'm getting ready to go ahead and launch a teaching thing that I was going to use YouTube for, but it sounds like podcast might be a competitor to that idea. And I don't literally mean a competitor, but if I'm a health coach and I want to teach, give ideas about health nuggets, not a selling platform, but a teaching platform, where would you go? Podcasts or YouTube?
I would go to YouTube because in that aspect, I would want to see it. I would want to visually see what you're teaching me. But then you could also use that video and, you know, extract the audio, and you can also have a podcast version of that as well. But for me personally, YouTube.
Amanda, do you do both?
I do both. Yes, we do YouTube and we do audio. So video. And
I would check her out, Steve. Another person who does a really good job of jumping back and forth with those is Random Topics. And of course, I'm going to go sports and Indianapolis Colts here with it. But Pat Mcafee. Pat Mcafee is a killer on podcasts and is a killer on YouTube as well. So, and I'm not sure how you guys do it, but they do a really good job of kind of doing them both at the same time.
Yep, and that's exactly what we do. So I'm probably as soon as we get off of here, Huggy and I are going to record our episode for tomorrow. And I got a Zoom set up, and we're just going to record our video at the same time as our audio. And then what I'll do is I'll extract both, and I'll get my video up and edited to put on YouTube to schedule to go out tomorrow. And then the same on SoundCloud and our website. And where else do I put it? I think that's it.
Okay,
As
so
long
you're
as I'm
talking.
kind of at the tail end of my question, that sheet that you showed with all the equipment,
Yes.
what would you say the rough number is to go ahead and buy that sheet?
That was roughly about $500
But for that whole thing?
for the whole thing. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brandon, we're right there. Okay, so when you're talking about editing,
Yeah.
and it's so funny because he knows already. I was like chomping at the bit. Okay, so
Not
what
everyone
program-
wants to buy the whole Adobe suite. So.
Right.
Right. So how do we extract that? Because I do it a little bit different where I actually do the video of, I will do the recording of my anchor, and then I'll just do a screen record.
Yeah.
And put that up there so I don't have to do any video as far as seeing me. But tell me when you're doing a video and you're going to pull that, what program do you use?
So I use, going back to Brandon's point, we do use Adobe Audition. That's just because it's just something that I've always known, and it's what I use to edit, you know, when we're at the radio station. But something as simple as Zoom. I mean, when you think of a podcast, you're not editing, you're not chopping. I mean, unless there's like the beginning and the end part, you want to get out, you know, your dead air, as we call it here in radio. But you can really use Zoom, and then there's your audio right there. You really don't need any editing software. I haven't really used anything else, but what do you use, Rebecca? Do you just use the app, or you just record?
No,
Okay.
I depends. So I've actually done a YouTube video, an Instagram live, a Facebook live, and recorded the podcast all at the same time.
Wow.
That was too much. So I'm just actually doing my Facebook separate.
Mm-hmm.
And then I am doing and then I'm recording the podcast. So
Okay.
and that's where I'm asking you, because I would love to be able to do one and then edit.
Yeah, I would recommend Zoom for that.
Well, one recommendation as well. Most simple video editors, like even the free ones that come on your computers, your Windows Movie Maker, Apple iMovies, they all can export audio as well. So if you're not doing a video component, you can always drag your file in there. So wherever you're recording it on. One other thing to think of as well with your audio, it can be an absolute nightmare trying to edit audio from a poor microphone. So you think to yourself, I don't really want to spend $100, $200, whatever it is on a microphone. It can save you an immense amount of time because, like, for instance, on my end, I do a little bit of voiceover work. So I have a nice Blue podcasting mic. It's a really good mic. Blue is the brand. It's a brand name.
Got it.
And it's great. I never have to pull it into Audition. I just don't. And it's because it captures the sound so well and there's no real audio editing needed.
And that's free?
The Blue microphone?
Yeah. Oh, the microphone.
No.
Gotcha. I'm like, that's free?
But it just makes it where I don't have to do a lot of editing. Now, myself, of course, I do the same because, as most people on this call know, I edit a lot of video. I do all that kind of stuff. For the chamber. But outside of that, I could easily just take those audio files and toss them into Windows Movie Maker, or, we've talked on other calls about programs like Filmora. They're really inexpensive or free, and you can export an audio file with that. So all you really would be doing in there is cutting out those parts you don't want to have in the portion. And then Rebecca and I also brought up the other good point too. Some of those programs that you upload the files into have splicing ability. So they'll have the ability where you can cut parts out. So that's another thing to think of as well.
Now, so I do actually have one more question. Well, I probably have more, but when you have a product that you're selling, is there a different format that you need to take? Because I have some people on here who actually they do services. So they sell products and they also do services. So is there a different way to go about using a podcast to help with that?
I don't think so. I think it's just showing you as a person, using the product, whatever that may be. How are you using it in your everyday lives? I think if you go about it a different way, it might come across as disingenuous. And it's like, I'm drinking Coca-Cola right now because they're sponsoring this podcast. I think you just kind of incorporate it, naturally. And I don't think you should have to, do anything different than what you normally would do on your podcast. I think you should just kind of let it flow and let it feel real, because that's why people listen to podcasts, because it is real. It's, radio, there's a lot of stuff that we do behind the scenes, but a podcast, that's raw. And so I really think that's what it would be if you had a client or a product that you wanted to incorporate. It should be raw.
Does it take a certain amount of time to gain listeners? Should you expect a certain level of, especially if you're new, like you have a following right now, but if you're new, is there a level that they need to not worry and get discouraged? Because
I get where you're coming from. And I get this all the time too. Like, I'll give you an example. This isn't like compared to podcasting, but like when we get new clients on board and they're not getting the response that they want within 3 weeks of being on the air, I'm like, well, you're not giving it time to grow. You're not giving, you plant a seed. It's not just going to sprout right away. You got to water it and you got to take care of it and you got to, get it out there. And that's what I feel with a podcast. Like Huggy and I just started this podcast, and because we do have, like you said, like the platform that we have, we kind of have a little bit of an audience, but I mean, we haven't gotten up to 1,000 listens yet. So I think we're just being patient. I think that's the word I want to use, is just be patient and be consistent, because if you're not, then people aren't going to, trust that you're going to keep putting this podcast out. So I think be patient and be trustworthy. And I think you'll be good to go.
So patient, authentic, trustworthy, and consistent.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm taking notes.
Good. I'm glad, because I'm like, I hope this is good. I'm like, I hope I'm giving, you guys some information that you could use.
Yeah, no, I think it's really good. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, so on here today, I see marketing. I see people who own a spa. I have health officials, financial advisors.
Wow.
I've got people who are all kinds. So is there any kind of advice that you would want to give? Just some easy pointers. So if they wanted to start today, what do they need to do? I have a law firm on here too. I have a law firm. I mean, is there certain logistics that they're not allowed to talk about, like finance and that type? Is there anything they need to know?
I don't think there's anything you can't talk about. And, the spa just kind of like stood out to me. Like that's really cool. And, what if you got like testimonials of, and then the law firm, what if you had, a client of yours on your podcast? That could be 100 episodes right there. If you have 100 clients, just kind of basically telling, your listening audience about their experience and what your company and brand and business is all about. There's nothing you can't talk about. And you can swear, you can be yourself, you can just be your own self, because that's what people connect to, man. If you're trying to be something that you're not, or that your business is not, I wouldn't do that. But yeah, talk about your best practices, talk about tips and tricks, like Steve was talking about. He wants to, do some videos where, he's teaching people how to do stuff. Like, what if, you got somebody who wants to become a masseuse and they want to learn the techniques of Swedish massage? Maybe you can kind of, that could be an episode right there. Same thing about the law firm, I think teaching is a good takeaway. If they're kind of getting something out of it that then they could use in their everyday lives, I think that's great.
I love that. And what would you tell them? How much preparation do they need to get started?
Well, I would you definitely want to have a plan. Because if you just go on and just start talking, it's going to sound like you're going all over the place. So you definitely want to have, a plan of like, okay, this is how I'm going to kick it. Believe me, because I've been there. I'm like, yeah.
Oh no, I'm laughing. You want to know why I'm laughing? I'm laughing because that's me. I write down, I have all my plan. I have it.
Yeah.
But then my daughter, who also does it, doesn't do any of that. She just wings it. So I'm laughing because you're saying that and I'm going, uh-huh.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, kudos to her if it's successful in that way. But even when it comes to doing my show on the air, I always have pointers of what I want to touch on. I mean, I'm not reading anything verbatim, but just having, your fine-tuned points and what you want to touch on, I think it'll really make the podcast seamless. But yeah, I think preparation is a huge part of it. Like in Huggy's, I give that to Huggy. Huggy, he likes to take the wheel and drive, and I'm more or less the co-host to his podcast, I feel like, because he loves creating, and he loves kind of creating like a draft of like, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. We'll start with this. It's always like something serious we talk about, something funny that we talk about, and then a recommendation we always give at the end of our podcast. And so, it just kind of like it's kind of like a story. Like it's like beginning, middle, and end. And I think the more you prepare for it, the more successful that episode will be.
I love that. Go ahead, Brandon. You're going to ask.
Yeah, no, I had something that I actually was thinking about a little bit too, because I'm thinking a little bit about this group, and a lot of them may not be that familiar with podcasts. Like I'm a podcastaholic. I'm a big on Barstool, all those. So I'm very familiar with them. But when I really think about it, and we'll actually give a little throwback and plug here with Alpha, is podcasts are really similar to radio morning shows. It is almost the same topic. I mean, like I think of it, correct me if I'm wrong here, Dax, 92.7's a big boy in the mornings. I know.
Nice.
So Big Boy, it's the same show almost every day, but it's done in a familiar way, and it's done on relevant current topics, or he's just prank calling someone. But it's done in a way to where his audience over time has built up that consistency. They know what to trust. They know what they're going to hear. I'll listen to Dan Patrick in the mornings because I know the types of takes he gives on sports are similar to what I agree with. So you have to think about that. It's not a marketing and pushing to the masses. It's finding your niche. It's really, really finding that. There's a specific type of person that wants to listen to Big Boy or Ice or Billy Madison. every day. So you're going to have those certain types of people. And that's what you have to think about with your podcast. You're growing for a specific audience. If you're a law firm, you're growing with people that are interested in that law topic. So don't veer off in the middle of nowhere. And again, just tell me to shut up at any point. If I'm wrong, Ice, just slap my hand and tell me to get out, and I will be fine with it. But it's bringing in relevant, current, modern topics, because in that same facet, it's very similar to like YouTube. You're looking at things that are very popular and are current topics. You know, why has Jenna Marbles stayed big on YouTube for so long? Because she finds ways to stay with her attitude and her style, but talk about things that are relevant. And bring up things in a playful way that are relevant. So it's really that kind of that storytelling a little bit, but within your area, because you'll build that reputation. So in that element, the same podcast that ICE made 2 months ago, that may have 300 listens right now, that may have 500,000 listens next year. I'm sure she hopes. But and it's literally just one or two of the podcast episodes catching on here or there that'll draw that up. So again, it is that consistency, keeping with it.
So that actually goes with the question that we have here. Chris Little actually just asked that. This is, how often should you do a podcast? Like social media, should you publish one regularly or risk losing your listeners? So, and I found that. So if I'm not consistent with what I'm doing at least 3 times a week, I lose my listeners. And then instead of me having my estimated 6 listeners, I might have 5 listeners. So what would you say that you've learned as far as that consistency goes?
Yeah, that's a good question, Chris. I would say for me, what's worked well, and it's not too much, I would say a weekly podcast. If you're putting an episode out a week, I think that's a good place to start. But even if you're just beginning and you just wanted to do like 1 a month, I think that's fine too. You know, I think it just all depends on how hard do you want to work and how much do you want to put out. Like if you just kind of want to start out and you're like, okay, I just want to kind of see what this is like. I want to see if I can be consistent. I want to see if I can keep this going. Cause you know, it like the post-production of it, you know, of editing out the front ends and the back end and putting that on and then getting it scheduled. I mean, it takes time. So once Huggy and I record today, it'll probably take me, another hour and a half to kind of get everything up, get everything edited, get it all scheduled. So you do have to commit. So you want to think about that. Can I commit to doing a weekly podcast? Can I commit to doing a monthly podcast? So I would say it's really based on your preference. And I think, going back to Brandon's point of staying consistent. And if you stick with that, then your audience will trust you because you're sticking with your plan that you decided how you want to execute your podcast.
Okay, Steve, you had a question?
Yeah, Amanda, I could sure see the benefit of having a partner in all of this, a like-minded person that you can bounce ideas off of, but also that could share the work.
Absolutely. And that's kind of how the partnership is between Huggy and I. He'll, like I said, he'll write it, he'll plan it. He'll help because we like to post a promo, because obviously a podcast is going to be longer, and on platforms like Twitter, social, or Instagram, you're only allowed to post 60 seconds, 2 minutes on Twitter. So we always do like a promo version of our podcast, which helps tease it and helps, kind of direct where they can go listen to it. And so Huggy will handle that and I'll handle editing it and scheduling it. So yeah, I think it's really beneficial to have a partner and somebody that you can lean on and they can lean on you.
I do want to make sure though that everybody is aware that some of the editing platforms that are out there, or not the editing, but the ones that you use to distribute, have that, and they're very seamless and easy. So when you are starting, you don't necessarily have to do a lot of editing if you use some of those programs, at least in the beginning. That's what I found.
Yeah.
I don't want them to get overwhelmed with thinking they have to do editing and stuff before they start.
Or even an intro. I mean, like, don't even feel like I just wanted to show you that because I feel like it's a good bait, like to get people to kind of listen. You don't even have to have an intro. I mean, if you're just coming on there, introducing yourself and, your guests of who you're going to come on and just get right into it, I think that's totally okay too.
We do have a question from Edra that says, do you think if you are testing that it might be better to start with more evergreen content instead of relevant content? That's a good question.
That is, I really think you should probably talk about what it is that you're passionate about, relevant, topics and everything that's kind of happening in the world. I think that will come as things change in the world. But I think if you're honing in on kind of like what your podcast is about, I would start there in my personal opinion.
Okay, that's good. I also wanted to let you know too, for those that are listening, Ice had said that you can cuss, you can do whatever. Do keep in mind that
Not
if
on
you
this
are
call.
doing that,
Not on
not
this
on this call, yeah, not on this call. But if you do that, keep in mind that there's going to be certain platforms where they will not allow your post to be if there is too much inappropriate talking. So I want people to know that too.
Absolutely. That's smart. And even too, like law firms, I mean, you really want to be careful, because you really don't want to turn anybody off too. But, for like Huggy and I feel like we are just who we are. And that's pretty much what our podcast is. So I think our audience kind of just expects us to just be ourselves and not censor as much. But I think if you're coming from a business standpoint or, like a brand standpoint, I think, you want to be careful about, how you're speaking.
Is there a certain podcast that has more traction right now that you've seen? Dex, I don't know if you watch how everything is shifting, but is there something that they're consuming much more as far as a certain topic goes than usual?
Well, Joe Rogan's podcast is off the charts. One of the things that matter of fact, he just moved his home base over to Spotify. And as we, turn the corner, I guess we've already turned the corner for the presidential season. You're seeing a lot more political based podcast with high listenership, which again that fluctuates just depending on what's going on in the election cycle. But the Joe Rogan thing, that's one that's sticking around.
Yeah, there's a podcast that Huggy actually listens to frequently, and it's called Good Mythical Morning, and it's basically
it's so good.
It's right.
So good.
Wait, what's it called? Good
Mythical Morning.
It makes no sense, but it's
and that's I think that's what the beauty of it is it's just two guys. And they incorporate video as well. So if you go on YouTube, you can search Good Mythical Morning. And I think that's where they get a lot of their listenership, man, is just because they're just doing goofy off the wall things that people don't even like. I remember an episode that they did where they were like, I bet you can't name 150 ways to say the word snow. And they went through 150 ways to say the word snow. And it was just hilarious. And so, you find what you like and you find what you're passionate about. And I'm passionate about goofy, funny things. So I want to see what they're always talking about.
I love that.
That actually is an amazing point, Ice, because it points out how creative and off the wall you can be with that. The premise of that podcast, and it is one of the more popular ones out, is that a guy fell through a magical portal behind a Burger King. Ended in a magical world called Foon, and now has a podcast because his podcast equipment was with him. Get creative.
I love that.
Right?
That's awesome. Well, I will be subscribing to your podcast. I'm yes, I'll be subscribing. Mine, just so you know, is called Energy with Shay Rizzo.
I love that.
Okay. And then we've got other ones on here too. I know that there is quite a bit who want to start a new podcast. How about I see a show of hands on how many people are now going to dabble with learning about a podcast? Come on. Who's with me? Really? Yay.
Awesome.
Yay. If you guys need help, just know you can go ahead. You give them your tagline or your
and I'll give you guys my email address too, and feel free to email me. I'm like, what else do I got going on? I'm sitting at home, man. So I would be more than happy to do one-on-one calls with you guys and tips and tricks. I mean, anything that I forgot today or I didn't cover today, like we could definitely go over again. I'd be more than happy to do that.
I gotta ask Lisa. I just saw Lisa's on the call.
Yeah,
Lisa, you gotta tell us. Are you gonna do a music-based podcast?
Yeah, and I want to tune in.
She'll post in chat in a minute. She better.
Amanda, what's on your shirt below the word Detroit?
What's that, Steve?
What's on your sweatshirt below the word Detroit?
It says Detroit hustles harder.
I like it.
I'll rep it to the day I die.
You betcha.
I love that. I love that. So we have does anybody want to say hello and kind of do a little intro and say something to everybody and to Ice and to Dax? Guys, want to do our little 30 seconds? You guys want to do that? Maybe?
Sure.
I see some thumbs up. Why don't you just go through the list, Rebecca?
Okay, you got it.
Brandon.
So first up would be Edra. Go ahead, Edra.
Hear me?
Yep. Tell them who you are and what are you going to do now?
Okay, so I'm Edra Izzo, and I work at Strategic Solutions, but I do have a podcast called Happy Shits Are Happening. But I noticed I only have one season. It has like 12, which probably technically like 11 episodes, but they are more like evergreen content that even I go back and listen to. And I do actually prepare. I just think about it. So I just think about it for like a week. What the heck am I going to talk about? What feels, whatever. And then I just kind of go with it. Like I talk alone, but I do it and I kind of do it in sections and it works. But yeah, you definitely I have to be motivated. So now I'm like, okay, I'm starting season 2 and I'm just going to do it. The first one, I'm just going to wing it. It's just going to be, because it says I have an estimated 11 listeners and I haven't posted in like 2 months. So that 11 has stayed at 11. So I'm like, okay, I have people, like, let's do this. So I'm just motivating myself. And then, yeah, that's it's called Happy Shits Are Happening, but I switched it to an upside down, like the exclamation point in the middle for shits. So hopefully it gets on Apple soon, but it's on everything else. So I have to do SoundCloud, I think, too. But I figure I'll just do that until it's free, and then I'll stop and be like, you need to follow me on here.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Steve, you're up.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca. But I tell you where you got my brain going, Amanda, and you were the first on this, get my brain going, Rebecca, and that was the idea of talking about some of the natural hormones that you want to promote in your body and are just not aware of. But I've always had as a mission, and it sounds lofty, but I think if you don't have a big, hellacious, humongous goal that can never happen, you don't have a good enough goal. And mine is to rid the Coachella Valley. That's a little valley that we live in. Amanda, about 400,000 people, something like that. Okay. Includes Palm Springs, to kind of put it in space and time. To rid the Coachella Valley of diabetes. Well, before you do that, you've got to educate the entire valley, or at least the people that need that information. And I could see this as being a great mechanism for doing that.
Well, so Steve, I know what the name of your podcast needs to be.
I was just thinking about what it ought to be. I'm ready.
It needs to be Diabetes Assassin.
Yeah. Okay.
I love that.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much. Lisa, you're up.
Hey guys, Edra, count me as number 12. Yay! There's not enough happy shits going on. I'm an instant fan.
Love that.
All right, and yes, great name, Rebecca. Great name. I have found myself, like so many others, unemployed during C-19. But it's also allowed me to do the things that I have not had time to do. My previous employment was the marketing director and business development officer for Big Rock Golf and Pub in Indio. I feel confident that we'll be working again soon in one capacity or another as it makes sense. But I've also been able to work with some of my charities, my passions. And so I'm going to be coming on as the marketing director for Coachella Valley Horse Rescue.
Yay!
And my initial idea is to do a podcast because they have veterans programs and they work with autistic kids, and there's 20 horses on the property. And, they've been sustaining really well during COVID. They're considered an essential business. They also have a 4-acre property I have ideas for like a drive-in concert or a drive-in movie. There's just a flat surface there. So I've got all these ideas churning, but they also have a handle on Instagram called Straight from the Horse's Mouth.
Oh,
so
that's good.
Right? So that's my first thought right there. And of course, my first love, my personal passion is always music. And I've always been able to talk to artists of all different levels, you know, and I've always had all this input for younger artists to help them develop their careers and whatnot. So lots of ideas brewing, great information, totally stoked about doing this and getting started. This is not something I've had time to investigate or even process or discover. So I'm ready.
I agree with you, Lisa. You know, being like was Dax was saying, I'm the APD, the MD, I do middays. I really didn't have the time to do a podcast. And so that's kind of where the idea came from with Huggy and I. We're like, hey, let's just start it. So kudos to you. Nice work.
Right.
You know Carol Smoot, Lisa?
I believe I do. The name is familiar. I just can't, I'm not pulling up a face.
Isn't it Carol Jenkins now?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay. All right. Yes.
She's got your heart with regard to horse rescue.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, it's hard not to love those guys. They've been really helpful to me personally, just through all the stress and strain. It's magical, actually.
It is. Now, Chris Little, you're up next. Do you want to let us know what's going on with you?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Ice, love the presentation.
Thanks.
Really looking to see how I could venture out in different markets and how I can really bring attention to our industry here. Actually, in business aviation, we're out at the Thermal Airport, so we have a lot to do with private jets. So obviously it tends to gravitate that we can bring attention to a whole new group of people. Aside from, you know, our usual users now. So I think that would be critical here for us and moving into the future. I was thinking more like a Ready, Jet, Go type of name, something fun to that event, but I'm looking forward to getting my hands a little bit more wet here. I've been attending a lot of these sessions that the chamber has been putting on, which has been fantastic, and just bringing some new ideas to my head, and maybe I'll be reaching out to you as well for some assistance on that. So I'm excited about it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Dallas. Thank you, Chris. Dallas, tell us a little bit about what you gained and what's going on with you.
Well, I have had this in my head for a while, so I just wanted to see if I could get any more information that would be beneficial, and I did. So I think what everyone else is talking about is time and just force it in my schedule, you know, take an hour a day or a week rather and do it.
Well, thank you, Dallas, for joining us today. We hope to see you on more of these calls. I'm glad you got something out of it. Okay, so I have Heather Rawlings. You're from the law firm.
Yes. Heather Rawlings. I'm with Holstrom Block and Park. We're a family law firm in Southern California. And we have a couple of different verticals. One of them is custody queens, and we deal with difficult custody issues. And so they're considering doing a podcast. So one of my associates and I are on this, just gaining knowledge from Amanda and her wisdom. It was awesome. Thank you so much for giving us information about the different platforms and just some of the fun ideas. So thank you so much, and good to be on here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. I think that being able to actually talk about family law and all the custody and everything is going to be incredibly helpful. I know right now I am consuming a ton of podcasts on my own well-being and trying to learn about all the different processes. So I think that's great. That's a great topic. So thank you. Thank you for joining.
We're trying to make it so it's not so scary, right?
Yeah,
you know,
right.
When people think about a law firm, they think of it as very expensive and very scary. Well, it's really people talking to other people. So we want to bring that to the forefront.
Which is exactly what Amanda was saying, is it's all about community. So that's great. You're going to find the community that's going to benefit from you doing this. That's awesome. Okay, so I have up next Karen Riley. Karen Riley? She's awesome. She actually owns a art company or a nonprofit organization that actually takes all recycled items and turns them into art. So I know that we've been talking, she might not be able to talk right now, but I know she wants to start a podcast on that. So I'm glad she was able to make it. Kimberly, you're up. Would you like to let everybody know who you are?
Sure. Starting a networking certification company, trying to get the young adults out there networking. So my rule 101 is to do video, not photo on Zoom, and I'm breaking it right now. The mascara didn't work, so we're not going on.
Look at me.
Anyway, I just really am excited. I've been taking a YouTube class, and now this, which has then in turn made this make so much more sense. And I know nothing's by accident, and our pathway for everything's on purpose. And listening to you today, Ice, it made so much sense because of my YouTube class, and the way you worded it was just so helpful and exciting, and just makes me want to get into it. So thank you so much.
Great, of course.
Thank you, Kimberly. And Kimberly's also on the board of directors for the Cathedral City Chamber. So is Karen. We've got a lot of people here that really help with our organization. Okay, so the next up is going to be Wheeze. You want to say a little something? You got to unmute yourself.
I love that name, Wheeze.
I'm muted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm the one that has the day spa. Hi. Thanks for doing this. And I didn't care that the mascara didn't work today. And that's my dog, Rocky. And he has to carry on when I get on the phone or anything because he's like a kid. And there's 2 other dogs. I'm surprised they haven't made noise yet. But anyway, thank you for having this. And I did take some notes, and I was trying to figure out, and I work with Edra also. She does my social media and stuff for me as well. I know Rebecca, we're in some groups together too. So I've been trying to figure out how to get one started, especially because I do services and so forth. So it's not like I have a bunch of, nobody wants to sit there and watch somebody get a facial, I don't think, for a podcast or anything. But I was just thinking right now, the other part of my business is I have tanning. And so I have a lot of clients that come in to me every day, essentially. And I've been closed since March 20th. So I myself am missing that interaction with my clients and that conversation because I see so many of these people on a daily basis and I know them. And a lot of them I've gone through the recession of 2008 with, and they'd come in and I'd ask them, how are you doing? And they would literally just like throw up on me some days. Like, my wife's cheating on me and I'm going to lose my house and da-da-da-da-da. And so I myself have missed that interaction with my clients. So I'm thinking that this is a good way for me to do that. So it's not so much, it would be promoting my business in a sense, but promoting it from the aspect of me because I am the face of that business, and that I could get out there and kind of talk to people and talk about what's going on. Like I'm frustrated right now with the way things are in our city and that we can't get open and the decisions that are being made. And then now with all this race and rioting and everything going on, it's just frustrating to me. And I can envision what I would be talking about to my customers, and I don't have that ability to have that face-to-face conversation with them. So I think this would be a good way to do it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I should just get on there and start rambling like I'm doing now, or if I have somebody else that I talk to. And then I was also thinking while I was talking to what Rebecca was saying, I would like to have a podcast with her sometime as a guest, because I know a lot of the things that she does with the energy is what goes into the facials and the massage as well, because we get a lot of that with people. We get energy from the client when we give the massage or the facial, and that energy transfers back between everybody. So energy and the facial and the massage and stuff, it's kind of hard to explain, but it all kind of goes together. So anyway, then I was just trying to figure out a name for it, and everybody knows me as Wheeze. So right now I'm just thinking of Chat with Wheeze.
I like it. And you name it. I'm there. I'm so there.
You
so there.
Name it and then change it later.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then it, like, depending on like where you put it, like I use Anchor also, but when I change it in Anchor, then it will change it on all the other ones.
Okay. Well, you're my marketing girl, so I'm relying on you to do some of that for me. So.
Now we do have one more person on here, but it doesn't look like they're actually going to be able to talk. So Karina, shout out to her, California Bank and Trust. She's awesome. So you've got such a mix of how many people were able to benefit from today's workshop. We're incredibly grateful that you came out. I'm really excited right now. So
me too.
So if anybody wants me as a guest on your podcast, dude, sign me up. Just let me know. I'm down. Okay. And just so you know, one of the things, I am a member of the chamber as well, even though I work here. Okay. I have 3 businesses that are part of this membership because I believe in our membership and our community so much. But what they're talking about is I make all my own jewelry.
Oh,
and
cool.
all of my jewelry is all based off of energy healing.
I love that.
And so that's where the podcast goes. The name of my jewelry line is called By Shay Rizzo.
Gotcha.
So Energy with Shay Rizzo, that's where that links up.
I love it.
Just so you know, that's what it was about, and that's why they're talking about energy. But you guys are all amazing. Is there anything that I missed? Know that we do have these events quite often. We're constantly looking for topic updates, for things that you guys need to know about. It doesn't matter whether it's accessible to us right now at the moment. If you need to learn it, you need to let us know so we can go find somebody who can get you the content you need to get you to that next level. We can't give to you if you don't tell us what we need. It's all about communication and making sure that we have a great, strong community, right?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. You guys are all awesome.
Just a quick reminder of a couple things coming up. We have started live lunch bunches again. We are currently at our capacity for tomorrow's. We can't do as many people as we know.
But we are accepting a wait list.
We are
So
doing
we
a
are
wait list
accepting
for
names.
infos.
So
Next week, we're finalizing one for next week right now. We do have the next week locked in, which will be going live here shortly, which is Denny's.
and then we actually have the 19th locked in too. We also have the 26th locked in, and we just locked in the 10th.
Yep. So we'll have a lot of announcements coming out for that. So we're finally going to be able to do in-person lunch bunches again. So that starts tomorrow. Again, we are at capacity, but if you want to go on the wait list, reach out to Rebecca. We also next week are going to be doing, and you'll be seeing this going up here in a little bit as well. We're going to be doing another GCV Educates on social media marketing with Cord Media. So they're bringing out 2 of their experts to go over social media marketing for business.
And as it stands right now, we are still not charging for our Zoom workshops. So this GCV Educates is something that we're putting out to you. No, we still have costs and expenses. So if you are able to join the membership, we would love that. But this is something we really want to raise and elevate our economic, business sector here. And part of that's making sure you're educated. So again, it's very important that if there is a topic you need to learn about, you need to make sure you let us know. Okay?
Cool. Yeah, I just want to put it out there too. Hey, Dax, I'll just go ahead and share my email address with everybody.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, and then just if you guys have any questions or anything like that, feel free to contact me anytime.
And we'll be sending that out. Dax, I think you were messaging me that you're going to send over that deck. So once we send out the normal list of everyone who attended to all of you, you'll also be getting that deck with it as well. And we'll be getting this up on social media later as well if you want to rewatch.
Awesome.
Awesome. You guys are amazing.
You guys
all have a really lunch.
Big thank you to ICE and to Alpha Media for connecting with us and getting this going. Thank you guys so much.
Of course. Thanks for being here.
You guys are amazing.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hey.
Did we get a confirmation if we signed up for the lunch?
You're in.
Okay.
You're in. Yeah, you're on my
Mine
list.
is
You're in.
Mine
yeah,
and
everybody
John's,
who
right?
signed up, unless you got something that sent back that you were full or it wouldn't lock up, you're in.
Okay.
And you were in, so thank you. And
Okay.
we just filled probably about an hour ago, maybe an hour and a half ago. So yeah, you're in.
Okay. So there was 2 though, me and John, right?
Yep. I
Got
believe
it.
John's on there too. Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll see you
Okay.
tomorrow. Yay.
Thanks, guys. See you
Have a
tomorrow.
great day.
Thanks, Amanda.
Brandon,
You're awesome.
awesome moderation. Thank you for your help.
Absolutely. Here if you need me.
Thank you, Ice.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.